Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about my pre-writing process. And I'm a pantser, so that probably means that it's a little chaotic and not maybe not as structured as you would think. But I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I get into the mindset of writing. And then hopefully give you some encouragement and tips for you as well. So the first thing is when I first started writing a book, I didn't really know what I was doing, obviously, because probably none of us do. And we've never done it before, right? So you don't really know what you're doing. And so you just kind of like start writing, right? That's kind of where I started. I wrote the first page of my book, and I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really know, like, it didn't feel right. It was kind of odd. And so I had to wait several months before the story idea came from me. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about just like getting into that pre-writing process. So now, if you are a plotter, this will probably look different for you. I'd imagine, because I don't know, but I'd imagine you get an idea and then you start plotting your book and you figure out like everything that fits in and your characters and all of that. For me, it can be a lot more exploratory, and I do it as I'm writing. So when I wrote my first book, and I kind of tried my hand at plotting because I thought that was how you had to write a book, right? You need an outline, you need a plot, you need to plot beforehand, all of that. Turned out I didn't. But when I first did that, I would do like a character profile. I created like the character profiles for everything and like their favorite food, their favorite color, what their family was, what their powers were because it was superpowers. And that was really helpful. And I've actually referenced those. But now it's more of like kind of a general idea, like when I have new characters. So I'm still writing that series that I started back in 08, Codex series. And so I'm still writing that. So those characters are pretty well fleshed out in my mind. There are characters that I add in that I kind of need to kind of fill out as I go, but I actually do that during the drafting process. I fill out those characters as I go. So one of the things I do when I'm like, before I actually start writing, the very technical thing is I will start a new draft in Pages, right? So it's not anything fancy. It's just the program I choose to write in. I have a Mac, so I use Pages. Love my MacBook Air. Poor little thing's on its last leg, but she's holding on for me. Anyway, so I will set up a new Pages doc, and I actually set it up so it has like the contents of, the table of contents included. Like there's a smart way to do it. And so that way, and then I use the same chapter header every time when I do a new chapter. So then I can always, if I'm lost or I want to research stuff, I can click back to the top of my document. It's got my table of contents and is actually clickable, and it'll jump me to that certain point. So that's how I set it up. I love to use Pages because they also have like the bookmarks option. It's got a built-in dictionary, which I'm obsessed with, and I use it all the time. And even when I'm not in Pages, like I'm writing in Google Docs, and I'm like, man, I wish they had that because it gives me ideas for like synonyms or anything like that. So I really enjoy using Pages, but you can use whatever you have. I mean, whatever program you use, if you like Word, Scrivener, if you like to use Google Docs, whatever it is, whatever program you prefer, get it down. That's the most important thing. So I'll set up my document. I will also, a lot of times, if I write a lot now on writing sprints. So if you are unaware, I have an Edit with an Editor membership, and that's one of the things I run. And we do sprints 4 times a week, and we're about to do one here in like 10 minutes. So I'm about to jump on that. But we do that as just part of the editing process, and you can actually use sprints for whatever you want, right? So sprints can be, hey, we're gonna write or edit or fill in the blank for 15 minutes, for example. And so I set a timer, and we all get some work done in those 15 minutes. So that's when a lot of my writing is done. Now, if I'm writing on my own, a lot of times I will set up a writing playlist because anytime I have music on, it really helps me concentrate. It really helps me really connect to just like, it helps like drown out all of the noise, and I can really focus. So music really helps me focus on things. So I So that's what I'll do. I'll have like usually a go-to writing playlist that I will use when I'm writing, because I like to curate certain things. There's music that I have to write to, and the music that I have to write to is, I can write to, obviously instrumental music can help, but a lot of times it's hard to find the right vibe for that. So I will listen to music that I'm very familiar with and that I have, like, usually I know the lyrics, can sing along to. That is the kind of stuff that my brain won't be analyzing. I can just let it fall into the background and I can work and work on the book exclusively. So when I'm not, like I said, when I'm not writing in sprints, and I'm writing on my own, I will put on a playlist. And typically in the past, I've set up writing playlists specifically for writing. So sometimes I will go back and use those from previous books, just because I've written my current book mostly on these sprints. I haven't listened to a lot of music while I was writing. So I don't have one set up for the current manuscript I'm working on. But it can be helpful to have like a set writing playlist. I got one for the first Codex books, the second one, the third one. I set one up for Honestly Always You, although I used, I think, Codex 2 for that one, the playlist. And I actually set up a playlist for, like, I do kind of a soundtrack, which is like, 10 to 15 songs that's specific to the book. And then I have the writing playlist, which is like a really long one, right? So if I'm writing all day, I'm not hearing the same 2 or 3 albums over and over. Anyway, it's kind of off track. But yeah, so that's part of my pre-writing process. I may actually like handwrite some ideas if I am having a little trouble like thinking of something, but a lot of times I'll have an idea in my head. This is how it happened for Honestly Always You, which is the romance book. It's actually a prequel to the Codex series, but it's a standalone. Like, you don't have to read the Codex series to understand it. It's all of that. Anyway, standalone romance. It's the story of how Mandy and Justin in the Codex series got together. So it's set 3 years before The Secret of the Codex. Side note. Anyway, so this is what happens frequently, but when I got the idea for that book, I had been talking to some author friends, and I was like, man, I really wish I knew how they got together, because it's not super relevant. Like, I don't need that information for the book, but it'd be really cool to have. Like, how did these characters get together? And I was really into romance, and so I wanted to find that out. So I wrote the book, and I kind of knew, I didn't know what, like, because I was interested in like what trope it was, like what was it, like, were they friends, were they best friends, were they enemies, like what was the story. So I was kind of mulling it over, and then one morning I woke up and the book started writing itself in my head. Like the opening scenes, I could see the opening scene. And this is usually how it works for me. The current manuscript I'm working on, that's how it happened. Like, I saw the opening words, like they started writing themselves in my head, and I'm like, I gotta write this down. And as soon as I do that, usually is like the what do they call it, gun, like at the starting line, they shoot the gun off, and that's when people start racing. Yeah. That's kind of like the starting gun. That's how I start writing. So it's a lot of fun. And so that's kind of like, it's super fluid and not really definite, but that's kind of the like my pre-writing process. I have the idea, I let it gestate for a little bit, and then once it starts writing itself in my head, I'm like, okay, now we got a book, now we got something started. And along the way, as I'm drafting, that's usually when I hash out characters. So a lot of times I won't know the characters until I see them on the page and see them interact, and then I get to know them that way. Same thing like with the plot itself. A lot of times the plotting process for me happens in the editing process. Like, I understand plot and I know how it works, and so I tell the story, but then there might be like plot holes or things that I can emphasize or bring out or push away or delete, or that kind of thing, just to make sure the plot is solid in the editing process. So all of that to say, we're going to wrap up because I've got sprints in 5 minutes. But all of that to say, whatever process you have is completely valid. Whatever pre-writing, writing, editing, marketing, publishing, fill in the blank, whatever process you have, if it works for you, if you feel good about it, if you're getting books out when you want to get them out, keep doing it. Don't let anyone tell you that your process is not valid, because mine is so erratic and so sporadic, and it's just all over the place, but it works for me. So I would encourage you, if you get feeling down on yourself or you feel like you're not doing it right, there is no right way. So give yourself grace in the process, learn. You can learn from what other people do. And that's kind of why I talk about this. You can learn from what I do, because if your process isn't working, you can do some research and be like, oh, I'm going to try that. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but you keep trying and keep iterating until you actually get that done. And then you'll have your writing process and you can feel good about it because it's one that makes you feel good. It's one that gets your books written. And it's one that actually gives you creative energy instead of draining you. So that's all I have for today. Yeah, stick around. We'll be talking more about this kind of stuff later on. Bye.